Hello everyone and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. And in today's Kerbal Space Program video, we're going to be sending a static base to Duna. This is going to be part of the Duna Colony series. And you know, it's probably one of the most exciting ones, if not the most exciting one. Yeah, surface bases are actually, I like surface bases. I like anything Kerbal. I feel like that's just kind of a redundant thing that I've been saying in every video. Like, I like satellites, I like this, I like that. But, yeah, they just allow you to be creative and kind of build them the way you want. Especially when it comes to the modules that you put on there. In this one, I put 4. And I have like a electrical one which has like a ton of batteries and solar panels, and then I have a communications one which has like satellite dishes, and I have ore refinery so we can always mine for ore, and then I also have a crew like habitation kind of thing where the crew can just where they can kind of just be. I don't really know, that it would probably be more practical in real life than in Kerbal Space Program, but it does add crew capacity to the colony. But yeah, this was a pretty long mission. I think, well, this video itself is like 29 minutes. I don't know what the final length is going to come down to, but yeah, even before editing, I think it was like 3 hours in total of playtime, and I had to like split it up. So I did like the builds in one day, and then I did the flying of the mission in another day, and things just kept going wrong. I kept forgetting to like save the save file before I flew it, and then there would be something wrong. That would be like a tiny piece, but you'll see that I do forget something, and then I have to like redo it. But it'll be like a tiny piece that I forget, and it kind of just affects everything else. But yeah, more about what's happening on screen right now. There you saw I was building that electrical module, and then each module is gonna have landing legs underneath it to support its weight, and then, you know, to keep it balanced and everything. And then module that I'm building now is like the ore refinery. So I have a ore holding tank, a convertitron, and some heat radiators, because you know that convertitron can get pretty hot. And then, you know, we have that main kind of core module there, which is just a science. Wait, I actually don't remember what kind of, like a science lab module. I don't even remember what kind of module that is, but that's like a science lab module. Then we have a cupola, and yeah, that's pretty much kind of like the main thing there. Here I'm building, I was thinking of putting like a hinge and then a piston to like extend a solar panel, or not a solar panel, to extend a satellite dish out, but that would have been not worth it at all. I ended up just putting the satellite dish on a rotor so it could spin to make it look a little bit more like, I don't know, to make it look a little bit more better, I want to say, or I don't know. I think it just looks cool, though, like that. But yeah, there's the rotor right there. And then I put 2 more, one on the main upright, and then one right next to the hitchhiker module. You know, like I was saying, not too much is happening. I've already explained a lot of this. You know, when you're building surface bases, though, you really need to think ahead of like everything that's gonna happen. You kind of want to go through the mission in your head, and then kind of think like, okay, what am I gonna need for this part? What am I gonna need in the future? Like here, I'm adding docking ports in case I wanted to dock a craft to it. So yeah, that's just something to think about while you're doing surface bases. And then also think about, is it a realistic size to launch? I still haven't gotten perfect with like saving parts of a vessel into separate save files yet, and that would have probably been the best thing to do, was to send the second modules up in separate launches, unlike the way I did it, where I just put these like on a I don't know, like beams above the craft, or beams above the cupola module, and then you know, detach them at the right time to redock them and reconfigure them. Here I was actually doing something that I thought was pretty cool. I'm basically making this like little vehicle that the Kerbals can get in and use, which has a little engine so they can kind of like fly around. I don't know, I thought that would be kind of fun. And then I made some like tiny landing legs out of those cubic octagonal struts. But I ended up, I don't know what happened actually, but it ended up getting turned upside down inside the craft. So when we actually landed there, I wasn't able to undock it and get use out of it, which was kind of sad. Yeah, not too much there, just a spark engine. No, I don't even remember. Was that a spark engine or a thumper? No, I'm completely blanking on the name of that engine. But it is irrelevant since it didn't even work. You know, in retrospect, I spent way too much time working on this, considering its limited fuel capacity. I mean, to be fair, we could have drilled for more fuel because we have that ore refinery and everything, but it served no use. But you know, bases in Kerbal Space Program, especially since this isn't a science mode playthrough, are pretty useless. Oh yeah, another thing, if you guys, I was thinking I might do like a science mode playthrough. I don't know if I'll make it a tutorial series or not, but you know, where I'll just like unlock the tech tree and stuff. I think that could be pretty cool. You know, maybe, you know, live stream it or something. I don't know. It's still a little idea that I have to think more about. But anyways, I digress. Here we're doing like the final touches on the base itself. I'm putting on some side boosters that are going to be aerospike engines, and that's going to help give us some extra stopping power when we're landing on Duna. But we didn't really need that much fuel. The main purpose of that was so we could have a place to mount the parachutes and then detach the parachutes, so that, you know, we want this base to look somewhat good. So we're gonna actually detach those boosters. But yeah, here I'm just testing like the landing legs that are working and stuff. And some of those landing legs are like clipped into that cargo bay there, and it won't deploy them if they're stowed, so I had to like open the cargo bay and everything. And then there I was just testing the separation of the boosters, and I had to actually set the gravity to 60%, I believe I set it to, which is close to Duna's gravity, but I reset it in time for the mission to happen, so everything in this was totally legit, as all my videos are. I always have like 100% entry heating or re-entry heating, 100% gravity, everything. So yeah. Yeah, here now I'm going to start working on the assembly of the truss structure soon. So I'm just doing one more test of everything, you know, because I don't know why. I just wanted to test everything, make sure everything worked. And then yeah, soon we're going to start working on that section that I was explaining earlier, where we build up on top of it. Okay, yeah, so now I'm just adding some RCS thrusters so that we can detach them and redock them, which is going to be important, or else, you know, we can't control them. And like I was explaining earlier, I flew this mission once before, and I forgot to even put like probe cores on there, so I put probe cores on, I launched the whole mission again, I was already on an encounter with Duna, and then they wouldn't actually fit between those boosters, because if you can look very, very closely, they're actually like clipped into those side boosters, so they wouldn't actually dock. So then I needed to end the mission, bring it back to Kerbin, and then add some Mark 1 crew modules, so I would be able to dock it together. But, you know, it was worth it because I did like the way that this turned out. It did look very, very good. So, yes, that's a thing that happened in this mission. I think I did this mission how many times? 2, 3, I think including the final time I did the mission, I think I did it 3 times. Which, you know, that's a considerable amount. I probably should have spent more time thinking about it. And I probably could have done some more docking testing while on Kerbin, or like while in LKO. to make sure everything worked. That was not a good idea on my behalf, but I did have quick saves, so everything turned out fine, as you can assume, or else I would not have posted this video. Yeah, just strutting everything together to make sure nothing is wobbling, or everything is wobbling as minimally as possible. And then adjusting the staging, so all the staging happens at the correct time. And here I just take it out to make sure that all of the decoupling happens, according to plan, because that's the last thing I want to have happen, is for me to get to the point where I'm ready to redock everything and then it doesn't actually work. But here we are starting the construction of the actual rocket. So one thing that you might notice is that I don't actually add nuclear engines here. And the reason for that is, if you can't tell for some reason, this is a huge payload, and I didn't really want to add a huge nuclear engine stage, which we would need to get to Duna. You'll see how big it ends up being. So what I did was, I put a senior docking port underneath the space, not the space station, underneath the main core of the colony, and then I sent up a nuclear stage that is going to go up, rendezvous, and dock with it, so that we have enough Delta V to get to Duna. But yeah, everything happened so quickly. The rocket is constructed, nothing too special, and then I adjusted the staging, and now we're getting into the launch. This is 1 time speed, so this is how fast it was actually going, and then I'm gonna speed it up again. I believe I sped this video up 6 times speed, so yeah, you can kind of get an idea on how long this ascent was. It took a while to get up to orbital speed. I think here I'm only at 900 meters a second, and I just deployed the 3rd stage. But we ended up making it. And then once we get high, once we get higher up in the atmosphere, we can just turn on our side to extend our orbit. And I went for a higher orbit. I went for a 100 kilometer orbit, and the reason for that is we need space so that the nuclear stage can dock with us. So we need it to be in a lower orbit so it can catch up with the Duna Colony, or the main part of the Duna Colony, so that we can have a successful orbital rendezvous. And there I'm just making sure those aero spikes are working, and they're also giving us some extra boost because that skipper doesn't have that much thrust to weight when it comes to this craft. And then here I just faded across to the build of the nuclear stage, which is being constructed right now, and you can see how much fuel we need. So I ended up having 6 nuclear engines like this, and I think in total, and it's actually kind of crazy how much weight plays a story into Delta V, because before I docked this to the Duna Colony, or to the Duna base, we had, I think, 7,000 meters per second of Delta V, and obviously our thrust to weight ratio was higher. But then when we docked to the Duna Colony, our Delta V went down to 3,000, which was still enough, but not as much as before. And there was actually something that I think was a pretty good idea. So I wasn't sure if the base was going to be able to withstand the re-entry heating. So what I did was I placed a heat shield. I put the inflatable heat shield on a probe core, and then I put a docking port under there, gave it some monopropellant and some RCS, so that way once we're done with the nuclear stage, we can undock it and then redock that heat shield to the underside of the base, so that way we don't risk overheating upon re-entry. But yeah, that's the whole nuclear stage pretty much, and there is for the bottom parts of it, I think I have a Rhino and then a Mammoth, and then these are 2, I forget what the name of those. I don't really use those too often, but this is again the 1-time speed playback, and you can see how slow the pace of it is. So yeah, this was a pretty slow, but but we got it into orbit fairly efficiently, actually. Um, like all of my, or like most of my rockets, nothing too crazy in terms of the ascent profile. Um, just gradually tipping, aiming to be 45 degrees by the time we hit 10 kilometers, and then, by the time I hit, or I like to do, by the time I hit 18 kilometers, I like to be almost completely horizontal, according to the nav ball. Yeah, now we can start some of the more interesting parts. Here, raising our orbit to 80 kilometer periapsis and apoapsis, and then adjusting it so we can get an encounter with the Duna Colony. Yeah, so the first thing we have to do, like always with rendezvous, is doing an inclination change to make sure our orbits are on the same plane, so they're on the same tilt pretty much. And then we can start moving around the maneuver node maker and adding retrograde or prograde according to what the intersect calls for. In this case, I think I got it on a pretty close intersect, not 0.1 kilometers, which is very good. Yeah, there it is, 0.1 kilometers and a 46 meter per second relative speed, but I'm pretty sure we didn't get it first go, so we didn't end up doing that. If you're trying to get docking, you don't really have to go too precise. I used to like spend way too much time, like not insane amount of time, but like a lot of time for maneuvers. But like I would try and get like 0.0 kilometer separation, and then you also have to realize that that's only going to happen if you execute the burn precisely, like exactly the way it needs to be, which is very, very, very difficult to do. But anyway, I digress. Now we're approaching the Duna Colony, and we can, start the docking. And there I was talking about before how I had to add those Mark 1 crew cabins on there afterwards. So this is, I think, what is this? This is the third take of flying this mission. I didn't really plan it out well. I think I came up with this idea, and I was like, you know what? Let's just do a Duna Colony, and see what happens. I came up with this idea. I didn't even plan anything. I didn't even know what I wanted it to look like. So yeah, that's probably not the best way to do things in Kerbal Space Program. But the docking is done now, so we've got most of the hard part. We just have a little bit ways to go, which is going to be planning our encounter with Duna, and then making sure that everything goes according to plan. Or, we don't really have a plan, so we're going to say we want to make sure everything goes the way we want it to go. But yeah, I actually, that little, one thing that happened here was that little vehicle that I had with that little engine was actually, what's it called? It was actually, like, activated. So the maneuver node maker said that I needed to stage and that I only had, like, 400 meters per second of delta V. And I was like, what the heck is happening? Why is it like that? So I had to, like, find out what was happening. And then I ended up having to, like, deactivate that engine and everything. And then my delta V, like, shot up to, like, 3,000 meters per second. Which is good. But yeah, that's a thing that happened while I was doing this. But now we planned our encounter with Duna. Now I'm just trying to get it more precise. It was pretty tricky to get it precise. I probably could have placed it farther along the trajectory. That way, it would take more delta V to burn, but we would be able to get it more controlled, which is what we want. But yeah, now I'm time warping away from Kerbin, the blue marble of Kerbal Space Program. Yeah, and then after this burn is complete, I believe that's when the docking process starts. Like I was saying, this was the successful run, or the successful flight of this mission. But I'd already done the docking, or I'd already attempted the docking process, I think, twice before. So this time it went very smoothly. And I actually cut out some of the docking. I only had you guys watch like 2 parts of it. But you know, watch the timestamps, because there'll be a timestamp for when the docking starts and when the docking ends. So if you want to skip any parts of the mission, just check the timestamps. You know, I always have something that says like the launch starts here, or the docking is here, or the landing. You know, all of that stuff is always in the timestamps, which are in the description or along the timeline. Or is it the timeline? I don't even know what it is. But yeah, just look out for that is pretty much what I'm saying. Here we are just making sure everything is good. We don't want a collision course with Duna, because that's pretty bad in terms of re-entry heating. But we did end up having that heat shield, so we probably could have withstood it. We probably could have withstood it. But yeah, here, just docking everything. Since all of those modules are like very close together, as soon as you undock it, it kind of gets like launched away. So you have to switch to it and then set the ship as the target, and then burn retrograde relative to the target to slow yourself down, so you don't get launched too far away from the ship. But you'll see the last one doesn't even get launched at all. It kind of like just undocks and kind of just floats right next to the ship. It doesn't even move. And then here's the ore refinery module that is getting docked. This time making sure everything gets lined up perfectly, and before we start heading towards it, we're going 0 meters per second relative to the docking port that we're docking to. And one thing that I had to make sure is that I docked with the legs facing the correct way, or else it would have been upside down, obviously, and you know, it would have been off balance. And now I just had to transfer monopropellant because I don't know why, like some tanks were like completely full and some tanks were empty, which doesn't make sense to me. I feel like they should all be extracting monopropellant at the same time. I don't know. But here I'm just fading to the second docking, which is done, and then the third docking I'm gonna fade also, so you don't have to watch through another, I don't know, what is it, like 45 seconds of it. It's probably not that much, but it does save a lot of time when it comes to terms of the whole video. And you know, you'll notice what happened is after I was doing the dockings, the ship was using the RCS and it was affecting its encounter with Duna, so I had to redo the whole thing again, which was pretty annoying, but you know, it had to be done. We had to do it in order for this mission to be successful. Usually I try and get my orbits to go with the rotation of the planet, you know, just so if we ever need to exit the orbit, we'll have a little bit more of like a kind of a slingshot effect. I don't really know how to describe it, but if you're going with the rotation of a planet, if you need to exit, you'll have a little bit more delta V because you'll already be going in the correct direction, and the gravity won't be affecting or won't be working against you. But since we're landing this, we don't really need to worry about that at all. So yeah, just bringing up our periapsis. I believe Duna's atmosphere starts at 60 kilometers, so anything under there, you're getting an encounter with the atmosphere. And now we're just bringing up the thrust on those nuclear engines since we did adjust them. And then just time warping towards Duna, and waiting for us to get close to it. Now we are approaching the red planet. Alright, and now we can use the RCS to kind of orient ourselves towards the maneuver, so we can start burning and kind of like orbiting ourselves around Duna. And then since we're going to get into an orbit, we're not going to slow down into the atmosphere right away, because once we get into orbit, I'm just going to kind of cut the engines. So we're going to cut the throttle on the nuclear engines, and then once we're orbiting around, we'll do the maneuver I was talking about with the heat shield. So yeah, now we can time warp to a spot in our orbit where we're out of the atmosphere, like this, and then we can undock that section and then redock the heat shield like this. The heat shield doesn't actually cover the whole underside of the colony, or the colony base, but it'll protect most of the base from re-entry heating. And actually, what ended up happening is we weren't actually going fast enough to induce re-entry heating. So this was kind of just like a way to add more air resistance. Even though we were entering the atmosphere at like 1100 meters per second, Duna's atmosphere is only a fraction of the thickness of Kerbin's atmosphere. So on Kerbin it would have been a different story, but on Duna we'll be fine. So yep, now we're getting into the thicker parts of the atmosphere, so we can decouple that heat shield and get ready to deploy the parachutes. Oh, there the parachutes go. Probably in real life would want to be way more careful with a colony, especially assuming that there will be people in there, like way more than 2 that are not specially trained, but you know, it's alright. And here, I brought it down to 1 times speed so you can kind of see the actual landing speed. It was a very bit shaky because there was the chutes don't actually like kind of go away until you're completely stopped on the ground. But you know, yeah. And you could probably tell that one of those side panels were shaking around. That's because they didn't have enough ground contact. So they were kind of like, oh my gosh, am I touching the ground? Am I not touching the ground? What's happening? But I found a solution to it after recording this, which was just to like whichever legs are barely touching to just retract them, and then the problem will go away. Now we can just bring our Kerbals out on EVA, plant the flag, Duna base. I'm just gonna call it Duna base. Even though this base won't move, we'll still know that it was here, even if it gets destroyed, which will hopefully not happen. But you know, it could. And here are our Kerbals out on EVA by the flag. But yeah, that was the whole mission. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was really fun to build, or fun to fly, and fun to build, like I said. But if you did enjoy this, leave it a like. And if you liked what I've been doing so far and you're following this channel, consider subscribing. You know, it's free, no additional charge. But yeah, that's the whole video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.